Really excited about this because it actually has been something that I've been thinking about and just digging into for a couple of years. And so to be able to now formulate it and bring it here is really a nice honor. And I think a lot of you know that I took a sabbatical, and it was a 1.5-year long sabbatical. And some people asked, well, what was behind that? What was going on? And you know, it all really boiled down to one thing. And that one thing was that there was a call within me to just stop, listen, stop being busy, and to just go within. Well, that call kept coming and coming and coming. And it showed up in a lot of different ways. And I responded to that by getting busier and busier and doing more and more. And then one day, and it was actually my 40th birthday, I don't think there was any relation to that.
Oh, yeah.
No. But I finally had to stop. And for me, the solution was to really step into what a sabbatical meant, which was just a period of almost isolation, of that deep, deep inner joy and that inner journey. And I want to share with you that it has been an amazing, amazing journey. I wouldn't say it's been easy. Sometimes it was downright painful, but it was incredibly rewarding. And my takeaway is the piece that I want to share with you today. And it's that call to really listen and what that call is about. And I think for a lot of us, you know, we think, well, we're showing up at church on Sunday, we're taking classes, we're reading our creative thought, we're doing our spiritual work. Well, I realize there's a whole bunch more for me to do. And what occurred to me was, what was getting in my way was the trap that I had fallen into. And it was a trap where I kind of dissected pieces of myself. And I had all these pieces that I thought were just so great, perfect, and healed. And then there's these pieces over here that maybe they weren't quite so flattering. And so I was emphasizing this over here, kind of ignoring that over there. Well, part of my process of sabbatical was taking a look at that. And I came to discover that I wasn't the only one who does this. And in fact, it's so common, there's actually a phrase that describes it, and it's called spiritual bypass. Well, I thought that sounded really cool. And the author and gentleman who wrote about this was named John Wellwood. So here's what he has to say, and you can see if maybe any of it rings true for you. He says spiritual bypass is a widespread tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. He then goes on to say that when we're spiritually bypassing, we often use the goal of awakening or liberation to rationalize what he calls premature transcendence. Trying to rise above the raw, messy side of our humanness before we have fully faced and made peace with it. And that we tend to use absolute truth to disparage or dismiss our relative human needs, our feelings, our psychological problems, our relational difficulties, and our developmental deficits. So, does that ring true for anybody here? Yeah. I don't know about you, but there are times that I've wanted to bypass all of that hard, inner, painful work of healing. And I want to be in that place where I'm just bathed in harmony and bliss and peace. And, you know, sometimes being human feels incredibly messy. It's confusing, and I just want to take a long-term vacation from the whole process. And I think it feels a little overwhelming. And that's what it boils down to. And I contrast that with this yearning I have to know be clear, to know that there is something more, that I'm something more, and it really is okay. And I think our draw is towards that, like the ADD answer, like it's the 10-minute or 10-second commercial spot. We have an easy step answer. Watch this commercial, apply this, and it's done. And I think we want that in terms of being able to know, I've forgiven everything. I've forgiven myself. I can be loving. And I do think theoretically it's possible that we could have one of those life-changing, transcendentally healing moments where we are in the bliss. But I tend to think that those are more moments. And that to have that be sustainable requires us to be willing to step into that inner journey. And I think that journey's probably going to have some fits and starts. I think we're going to have good days and not so good days. And the reason is, we've had a lifetime to accrue emotional baggage, unless we're really, really blessed and lucky. And if that's you, I really want to talk to you afterwards because I want to know what your trick is. Because I think I spend a lot of time, and I think we all do, looking at our gunk and wanting to be rid of it. And I think, again, it calls for that willingness to have that deeper exploration into ourself. And so that is the title of my talk. The only way out is through. And the through is into that journey. So where does spiritual bypass play into that? Well, it creates the illusion that you're past all that junk. That you're just detouring around it. You don't have to go in, you don't have to go through. You're already out. And what happens when we do that is, by detouring and bypassing, I think we actually get further away from where we want to be. Because now we don't have our stuff we need to heal. We also have the barrier that denies there is anything that needs to be healed. And what happens is we use this concept of being spiritual as a smothering blanket on our humanity. And we deny the wounds, we deny our needs and our hurts. But what I've come to feel is that it's when we accept them. We accept that that exists within us. And that doesn't mean we set up camp and we indulge and we wallow in the misery of that. But it means we acknowledge it exists. And when we do that, we're able to transcend and transform the wound into something that enriches us. It gives us wisdom and strength. Because I don't think it's possible to put a spiritual Band-Aid on our wounds. I don't think we get to turn our back and assume that they're healed, or even just neutral. Because in order to take those painful places and do something with them, we have to acknowledge them. We have to look at them. And I think what I took away from my sabbatical was the idea of, can I start where I am? Maybe this isn't where I want to be. I want to be this thing over here. I want to be this person over here. But by beginning here, I'm not running away from what I don't like and what frightens me. And I think the key is to do that with compassion, with gentleness for ourselves. And I think we can look at the places that hurt and let them guide us into what's calling us to be healed. Some of you a couple months ago participated in the workshop with Reverend Penny Masick. It was called Feet of Faith. She is Centers for Spiritual Living's spiritual coordinator, our ecclesiastical coordinator. She worked with our home office. And she's also my personal spiritual counselor. And I sought her out during my sabbatical to help me work through this process. And this Feet of Faith work that she does, one of the models they use is this image of a carriage. So an old-fashioned horse-drawn carriage. So imagine yourself and you're in that carriage riding along, and you think you're in control. You're in the driver's seat. Well, in the back seat of your carriage, So all that stuff you've shunted aside, all that fear, and the judgment, that anger. And those are the passengers. They're like the 2-year-old kids without the car seats, bouncing around side to side, just making that ride anything but smooth and seamless. And to continue this illustration, the opportunity for healing is to open up the back door and let those unruly passengers come into the front door of the carriage, into our awareness. And when I talk about this with people, I like to use the idea of taking all of those things that I'd wanted to reject, the anger, hurt, judgment, blah, 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 and bringing that up into my heart, loving that into wholeness, so that its power over me begins to just dissipate and dissolve. And instead, I look at it as just loving it into light. And when that happens, I think we're able to neutralize the way those things spark up and influence us in ways that we've been unaware. And what happens is we're now conscious. We're consciously recognizing how past hurts had wanted to influence our current reactions and actions and responses. But now we're in the driver's seat, and we don't have a backseat driver telling us, "Nah, do this, do that, blah, blah." We're not reacting out of that anymore. And I think that's an amazing tool to be able to work with these feelings and emotions that can be a little intimidating. John Wellwood says, feeling is a form of intelligence. It's the body's direct, holistic, intuitive way of knowing and responding. It's highly attuned and intelligent. Feeling often helps contact deep inner truth. And I think that when we use those feelings, they can point us towards ways where we can bring about a greater wholeness within ourselves, where we're truly living in that idea that we are whole, we are perfect, we are complete. And when we listen to our emotions and our feelings, instead of bypassing them, that's when we realize that they too are spiritual, that there isn't this division between the spiritual and the human. Because the only way out of these stuck places where we feel trapped is through. And the only way through is in. And I think we can journey inward with love, with compassion, with tenderness for ourselves, for those choices that we made that maybe we wish we hadn't, for everything that comprises our history, that comprises our present. Can we lovingly look at that, nurture that, and recognize that it too has a place in this healing spiritual work? Well, what's one of the tools that we have? It's this teaching, Science of Mind. Now, I think the name's kind of weird, but it is a great practice, so don't let the name put you off, because this is an incredible teaching tool. And when we apply the principles, we can transform our lives, and we can know that we are divine, we are God in form, and we're able to step in and let that be our expression. But I think there's a dark side to this too. And I don't know how much it's talked about, but I'm going to bite the bullet and talk about it today. And that is this idea of religious science guilt. So I don't know if anybody else has heard that term, but what I've seen happening and what I've done myself is I've misused these principles. And you take a concept like change your thinking and change your life. Well, then you start doing your daily prayers and your daily affirmations, and your life's not changing. So now what do? Where are you left to go? Because I think it's pretty easy to fall into the trap of thinking, oh, great, I'm a failure at being spiritual. I must be doing something wrong because it says this and it's not showing up for me. And what happens is we start using this teaching as a bludgeon, and we beat ourselves up about how we're failing at being spiritual. And then we play the should game. Well, I should be meditating more. I should be praying more. I should be saying my daily affirmations more. I should be experiencing greater joy, abundance, and love. But I'm not. And I have one question. How is that helping? Because really, if we aren't using these tools to help us to love ourselves, to have compassion for ourselves, then frankly, we shouldn't be using them. And I do believe that we can use these teachings and these tools in that manner. I believe we can use them as a guiding principle to go within, to journey within, and to heal ourselves, but in a loving manner, in a gentle way, in a way where we're compassionate with the missteps, with the fits and the starts, with the days where maybe we just don't want to get out of bed. I think we can love that too. Because this is what it all comes down to for me. The point of all of this spiritual work that we do, it's just to remember. That's it. It is our journey through life to remember that we are the divine in expression. I don't think anything else really matters. That's the whole point of going in and through and out. It's to get us back to where I think we entered into this plane of existence in this knowingness of our wholeness that through the human experience we forgot. And that takes us to the question, how fully are we expressing that divinity, our unique, precious, amazing divinity? Well, I think that varies day to day too. I think it changes moment by moment. But I think that we are called to have that expression be rich and full and alive. The other day I had a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about this very thing, which is, well, if I'm all God right now, if it's all God right now, why should I do anything? Why should I get out of bed? You know, and I think that that's a really good point. I think it can take you down the rabbit hole into an existential quandary of which there's no getting out of. But this is what I shared with her. And it certainly isn't anything new, but I think it does illustrate the point. I took the image of us trying to manage this dance of our humanity and our divinity, and I likened that to someone sitting in a room surrounded by windows. And so the sunlight is coming through. But the question becomes, how much sunlight's coming through? Because if the windows are covered in grime and grit and that caked on water stuff, I don't even know what you call that, but I wish it would go away from my own house, that really obscures that light. Lime? Mm-hmm. Lime scale, whatever. But when our windows are sparkly and shiny, guess what? We are getting the full impact of that light. Well, the grime and the lime, it's our baggage. It's all of that gunk, all of the wounds that we're not willing to try to heal. And that is what's separating us from being the divine in expression to the fullest extent possible. And that is the reason for the call, that inner call. It's okay. Please look, listen, feel, heal, and clean your windows. Because there is something deep within us that knows. And I don't care how small that piece is, we all have it. And it knows the joyous beauty of the light and the love that we are. And it wants to shine in us, as us, and through us. So I started this morning a few minutes ago actually, talking about where I was at the beginning of my sabbatical. And, you know, for me it has been a 2.5-year journey of digging in, diving headlong into my gunk. And I want to share with you that what I've said today is what I use. I use these tools, mostly loving kindness, gentleness, and compassion for myself. Because up until then, I don't think I was very generous with myself in using those things. It was easier to be compassionate with someone else, but so much harder to cut myself some slack. And I started very gently probing at those places that hurt. And I literally did. I brought them into that light, and I watched them be healed. And what I saw showing up was pretty amazing, because I found that I didn't need to be in a place where I thought that I should be more spiritual. What was showing up was a lighter, more joyous version of myself. I'm preferring to consider that my more authentic version. But it was the way I'd always wanted to be, but now I'm seeing that come through naturally. It's not work to get there. It's the effortless expression of divinity. And I think one of the reasons that happened was because I changed what spirituality meant to me. In a sense, I reimagined this idea of spiritual practice, daily spiritual practice. And for me, I made it a little bit less about this rigid, I must say my science of mind, spiritual mind treatment in the morning and the night. I must meditate. I must do this. I relaxed on that. I let that go. And that's not to say those things aren't important. They're very valuable. But if we're tied to this rigid idea of what it should be, it's an empty ritual. And instead, and I won't say I've done it, I'm working on letting each moment be a spiritual practice. And so I ask, am I fully present each moment, really listening to the people I'm with? Am I able to see the divine in everyone and every situation? Can I come from a place of loving kindness? And you know, for me, if I feel that I can answer yes most of the time, then I'm good. I'm doing my spiritual practice. And I think what it was creating something more organic, something that flows, something that wasn't subject to a particular time of day or a particular ritual. It was the expression of being. And what's come hand in hand with that expression of being, is letting go of the doing. And I know that, again, this is not a new concept, but it's a very, very important one. What I learned on my sabbatical was that doing is addicting, and it's habitual, because it lets us avoid what we're afraid is going to come up when we be. And a lot of times I literally just sit on my hands so that I don't jump into the doing, because it's so easy to fall back into that pattern. And now that conscious awareness comes in the choices I make. What do I say yes to? And I remember meeting a gal once, and she said, before we can fully know how to say yes, we have to learn how to say no. I still think on this to this day, and that was probably 8 years ago. Am I able to say no to what doesn't serve me? So that when I choose to say yes, it is true. It is a genuine expression of how I want to show up. It follows my intention to serve with love. And again, if I can say yes, that is what it's from, then that is my spiritual practice in form. And I'll be very honest here. There are certainly bumps on the road. I certainly have buttons that get pushed. And I got a little bit of a temper, so I can judge pretty quickly. But part of this process is accepting that okay, I can love this part of me too. Matter of fact, I can get a kick out of it, and I can be entertained by the fact that, I don't have a lot of patience. I can love that too. And what it is it's all about becoming conscious again and again and again. It's waking up every moment. And I believe that that's why we're here in this room on this beautiful, glorious fall day. Because we want to wake up. We want to explore these metaphysical teachings. We want to be aware. We want to be conscious. And so my desire for all of us here is that we continue each moment to remember, to wake up and remember that we are the divine in expression. And we don't have to bypass spiritually those parts of us that had scared us. We can just bring them in, and we can care for the entirety of our being, our mind, our body, our spirit. And we can do that with gentleness, with loving kindness, and with compassion. Because what we feel matters. What we believe matters. And what is wounded matters. And it matters because it's pointing to what needs to be healed so we can bring in that greater expression of the divine. So that we know it is all God and we are that. Namaste.
Namaste.